Last week we mentioned how at this time during the post-resurrection period we enter into an area where it is vital for Christians to understand the truth about the providence of salvation and to pass it along to others. And in the feast day that we celebrate on this particular Sunday, known the Sunday of the Samaritan woman, we hear what is known in missionary terms, having a missionary conversation. In other words, talking with somebody about the faith in order to pass it to them some truth because they are interested and they want to know, what does Christianity teach? What does Christ teach? What does God teach? During the service, the priest reads many secret prayers that you don't hear. Many of these are quite profound in their ways. I just want to read one short one to you, which occurs during the antiphons. Whilst the antiphons are being sung, the priest reads, "O thou who hast bestowed upon us these common and concordant prayers, and who didst promise that when 2 or 3 are agreed in thy name, thou wouldest grant their requests, do thou thyself now fulfill the requests of thy servants to their profit, granting us in this present age the knowledge of thy truth, and in that to come life everlasting." Most people who use their intelligence will tell you that one of the greatest things that they seek in their life is to know things how they really are, to know truth, real truth, not just hearsay or opinion or anything like that, but real truth. This truth can only come from Christ because Christ is truth, and from him no lie, no deception can ever come. This is what this Samaritan woman sought. She sought to know the truth about the Christ which was coming and about salvation and why the Jews were worshipping one way and why the Samaritans were doing things differently. Of course, Christ knew all that. He knew what she wanted. That's why he, before anybody else, sort of touched her, attended to her. Before she said anything, he attracted her and started to talk with her. One interesting thing is, what we have just read now is quite detailed, almost word for word. I'm sure there are a few other things said. Who was listening to this and recording it at that point? How do we know this was said? Well, it's from the Gospel of St. John. He was a young teenager at that point. And he says in his Gospel that everything he says is true, that he bore witness to it. And through this witness, we can be assured that it is true. So evidently, it would seem that when the other apostles went off to get provisions, maybe young John was with the Lord and heard all this, and of course remembered it all and recorded it all in his Gospel for our benefit and for the benefit of all those who come to Christianity. There are many instances like that where we get quite a lot of detailed conversations in the Gospels. The one that we're going to hear next week about the blind man is very similar as well. A great number of conversations backwards and forwards between Christ and somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And it's obvious that somebody did witness that and recorded that. In any case, this truth, like I said, is what we all seek one way or another. If you really think about it, if you ask somebody, what do you really want in life? What do you really, really want? Of course, we want salvation, but we want to know the truth of things. We want to know what is everything that we see? How is it given to us in this world that we are born into? We want to know it not with deception and opinions, but the way things really are. In the spiritual life, when people have that sort of understanding, they are called to be sober, to have nipses, to understand things as they really are. Spiritual fathers of great stature that have achieved a lot of height in the spiritual life know this truth, and it's not just about some external things, but it's about the spiritual life that others are leading or not leading as well. They can often tell you about yourself, your beginning, your present and your future. We've witnessed that ourselves, and many others have as well. That's why we have a lot of people from the beginning of Christianity that have gone on pilgrimages looking for people like that to sort out certain things in their life which they can't come to terms with because they can't get to the bottom of it. They don't have that fullness of truth and understanding, but others would, even though you may not know them or have never met them before. When they see you, they do give you this sort of information. One of the things that I came across recently, which has to do with, I guess, the world, the way the world is sorting its own knowledge out, comes from the discipline of physics. You know, physics, about forces, momentum and all this. There is a branch of physics which they consider to be the most complex and the most hardest to understand. It's called quantum mechanics. Don't worry about the name. But essentially what it boils down to is that this discipline has come to an understanding or a conclusion that we can never know those things that we see around us perfectly. We can never know it. And the more we try to know, the more we try to measure them and find out about them, the less we are able to do that. And therefore they use very high-level mathematics to apply things like probability and all things like that. Like if you're saying that you're sitting there, it's only a probability that you're sitting there, right? There's a probability you're not sitting there as well. There's this interesting thing about that, about the cat in the box, that the cat in the box may be there, but there's probability that it may not be there as well, you know. So what is all this saying, really? It's saying sort of the same thing coming from a worldly perspective, in that there is a truth, but we cannot, without God, come to that truth in perfection and understand it. Only through Christ can we come to that truth. By using scientific methods, equipment and examination and inspection, we only can end up with probabilities at best. And indeed, that's the way most of the things that occur in the mechanical world today are assessed, particularly if they're on small scales. And when I say small scales, I mean significantly small. Like, we consider the point of a pin has a diameter of many millions of atoms. How small is that? We're talking about scales even smaller than that. That's when these probabilities really start to make an impact and put to shame all the sort of high-tech things that we use. They are, in essence, not fully true. They're only probabilities. To know the truth, we have to grow spiritually. And to grow spiritually, you have to keep the commandments. Then, that spiritual growth opens your mind to the understanding of those things around you, as well as yourself, of course, not only now and not only in the future, but in the past as well. This is why we have prophets like St. John the theologian, who reached such a height that he was given to see what would happen to the end of the world, through the book that he wrote, Revelation, the last book of the New Testament. Just as Moses was given the opposite. He was given to see the beginning of things as they happened, because Moses was not there during the creation, yet he wrote in detail about it, having seen that through that prophetic vision that he was given. And the people that we meet that are on this high level have that sort of gift of grace with them. It's a mystical thing, and it's a great thing. And it only really shows that Christ does indeed dwell in the hearts of those who strive to keep his commandments. As he says, if you love me, keep my commandments, my Father and I will come and find our abode in thee. And through that, you yourself will know and understand things that nobody else can. No science or anything else, no philosophy or anything like that can ever understand that truth. The other thing, of course, about the world that we have around us is that it is fallen. It's not the way it was created. So when people, particularly from scientific backgrounds, make a big fuss about how much they know and how they use all these advanced techniques to assess the current world, what they are really assessing is a state of rot, a state of degradation and going downhill and perishing. That all has to be fixed up at the end of the world. When this world crashes and is eliminated, the Lord will make a new heaven and a new earth. And that is the hope that we have for our resurrection, that we will be part of that in truth. That's the sort of thing that we find in these last few weeks after Pascha, this idea of having some understanding so that not only we can bring forth fruit from that, but give it to others. Because as we read just before, Christ says to his apostles, look around you. There's all the wheat ready for harvest. In other words, he's not talking about wheat, as in, grains. He's talking about people. People who are ready for harvesting for the kingdom of heaven. They are there waiting to be told the truth. They are thirsting for it. And who is going to give it to them? Who? It's got to be those who are already members of the church. They have to know enough to be able to pass that on, one way or another. There are some that reap, and there are some that harvest it, that do different work. And that's how we bring forth our fruit for the life that's been given to us. We've been given life, we've joined the church, we have all the sacraments. Now we have to use that somehow to sort of make profit of that which God has given us. And may we indeed, during this Paschal period, understand that, and if we haven't been doing that in our life, put it into our life, little by little. You can't do all these things straight away. It's a bit of a shame that we're back into the tyranny that we're in. Well, all right. It's another temptation and probably a sign of worse things to come. As we said last year, that what we experienced then is not going to go away that quickly, despite what many people think. And here we are again in this sort of tyranny. God help us to dodge it and to make the best use of it in our lives. Amen.